Come to the table, come to the table, come to the table and celebrate with us. Hello, friends. Welcome back. Happy day 5, week 5, last week, however you want to think about our compassion camp. I've really enjoyed being together and spending time together. And I have felt overwhelmed with good feelings about our time. But sometimes I have feelings that aren't so good. They're a little uncomfortable. I can feel overwhelmed if I have a job that is so big. I can feel overwhelmed. If I've made too many mistakes sometimes, I feel overwhelmed. And when I feel that way, I kind of want to start over. I want a fresh start. I want the chance to try again. I want the chance to try to make things better. Have you ever had that? Have you ever felt that way? Wanted to start over when something's overwhelming or take a break and rest? I think fresh starts feel good. When we have a fresh start, we can feel hopeful about the next step, right? We feel hopeful. Think about when you clean your room, right? When you clean your room and the floor is empty and you can play or color or sit or read, you feel hopeful because that empty space can almost feel peaceful. When people are treated badly, I feel frustration, I feel sadness. In those times, I pray for justice. I pray for things to be made right. So I have a song, it's called the Compassion Prayer. And it helps us pray for ourselves, for others. And it goes like this. May we be filled with compassion. We've talked a lot about compassion, right? May we be filled with compassion. May we be filled to the top of our hearts. So say that again. May we be filled with compassion. May we be filled to the top of our hearts when we have the power to make something right. May we show God's love. All right, got my ukulele. Let's talk about this song. May we be filled with compassion. May we be filled up to the top of our hearts. Here we go. May we be filled with what? Compassion. May we be filled up to the top of our hearts, right? May we be filled with compassion. May we be filled up to the top of our hearts. May we have the power to make something right. May we show God's love. Let's try that. When we have the power to make something right, may we show God's love. Let's try from the top. Ready? 1, 2, 3. May we be filled with compassion. Good. May we be filled up to the top of our hearts when we have the power to make something right. May we show God's love. Let's repeat the God. May we show God's love. Well done, friends. In today's story, friends, okay, you're going to learn about how God loves fresh starts. God loves giving people new chances to try again or even to rest. In fact, when God shared the laws with Moses, God included something very special so everyone would have a fresh start once in a while. And as we prepare to learn more about fresh starts, we're going to do our compassion prayer. And remember, friends, you put one hand on your heart and one hand on your head. Why is that? Why do you think? Because compassion happens in our brains and we feel it in our hearts. So repeat after me. Joyful Spirit, your loving hands are always creating freedom release, and fresh starts. Help us do the same today by caring for all living things with gentleness and care. Open us to humbly receive that same care ourselves. Make our hearts smile and our actions sing. With your promise of abundance toward the whole world. Amen.
Welcome to our 5th and final week of Compassion Camp. It's amazing how quickly this month has gone by, but I hope you've had as much fun as I have as we've learned and grown together, figuring out what compassion means. And we have learned a lot. We have learned what it means to have compassion at the table, what it looks like to have compassion for our neighbor, how we have compassion for ourselves, and also how we have compassion along the way. And today, we're going to think about what it means to have compassion with the world. So let us jump right into our story time together. Now, our story today happens right after the Israelites have been freed from slavery in Egypt, when Moses leads them into the wilderness, and they have to travel for many, many years, actually, to the land that God has promised them. As we jump in on the story today, we are going to learn about an important and very special and wonderful tradition that God started called Jubilee. Basically, it means it's a way of starting over. When we are given a fresh start, we see, feel, and trust how God's abundance is meant for all people and creation. So as we listen to today's story, I want you to take a time to think about what it means to be given a fresh start. As we read our story together, we are not going to focus on emotions as much, but God gives 3 important instructions during our story. So I invite you to figure out how you would act out or show these 3 instructions. I'll take a moment to do it. I encourage you to do it at home. And if you want to share it with all of us, take a photo and send it to us. We would love to see what it looks like for you to follow these instructions. Let's listen. The people of Israel journeyed through the vast wilderness for many, many years. Finally, they arrived at Mount Sinai, where they rested. God gave instructions to their leader Moses for their life together in this new land. And these were the things that God said. In this land, we will practice Sabbath together. This will not happen only on the 7th day, but also on the 7th year. For 6 years, we will do all of our regular work and plant seeds, and we'll grow and prune and harvest fruits. But in the 7th year, we'll let the land rest. Even the land needs peace and quiet every once in a while. Everyone will be able to harvest and eat whatever the land gives us in that 7th year. In the 50th year, we will celebrate Jubilee together. This will be like the Sabbath every 7 years, where we'll let the land rest. It will also be a fresh start for the whole community, the land and the people. And everyone will go to their own homes and be together in joy. It is a holy time, and we will be fed and nourished by whatever the land gives us. In this time, we will respond with justice by giving fresh starts. This means that we will be fair and honest to one another. We will take care of those who are sick, alone, old, or need help. We will welcome people who are from different countries, and they will be like our family. We will work for people's freedom. We will all work together to help everyone rest and rejoice in God's abundance. I will bless the land during this year, so you do not have to work the land. And I promise we will all be fed and nourished by the land's gifts. This is God's story for us today. What do you imagine when you hear the word justice? To be honest, that's kind of a big word, and it's hard to think about what that means. But do you imagine courthouses or police officers? Do you imagine what happens when someone hurts you and they are punished for it? Do you imagine it's like equal treatment? Everyone gets the same amount of food or treats. Often God's ideas are very different from ours. God's idea of justice looks more like what we've talked about with compassion. It means seeing and welcoming, being brave and honest, loving ourselves, being present with each other. It means we see God's abundance. But that's another big word. What does abundance mean? Well, simply put, it means that there's enough for everyone. We can welcome all to the table. We can be brave and trust each other. We can be honest with our hearts. And we can give and receive care whenever we need it. And we can do the work with God to care for all of creation, both the land and the people. Now, as I said, justice and the words abundance and jubilee, these are three super big words for us today. So I invite you to pull out our last coloring sheet so we can take a little bit more time to imagine and ask together. How do you imagine the people of Israel felt about this command? I don't know about you, but they were in the wilderness a long, long time. And if you've ever been camping, you know that it's hard when you have to plan out how much food you need, how much water, or maybe the bathrooms are farther away, so you always have to be prepared. And now God is telling them in the wilderness, with maybe not as much food and water, that they're going to have to share everything equally. Everyone will be taken care of. It's kind of a little bit scary because you have to put a lot of trust in God in that moment. How do you think the land felt about this command? Now, don't be like Pastor Sarah. That is super silly. The land doesn't have feelings. First of all, when we talk about the land, we're talking about everything on the land, both plants and animals. And I don't know about you, but my kitty sure has a lot of feelings and love to give. So what do you think it means for the land to have that time of rest? Do you think it's important? I bet the land felt super good. So as God said, everything needs rest. How do you imagine the sick, lonely, or old felt about this command? What about people from different countries? You know, as I mentioned, when people were in the wilderness, they didn't have a lot. And also, people in the Bible weren't always the best sharers because they didn't have a lot of resources around them. And sometimes life was really hard. There would be these big droughts, and you wouldn't be able to plant and harvest as much. But I bet when the sick, lonely, and old heard that commandment, it made them feel really good to know that God was reminding us that we're all together and we're all in charge of one another. And it's important for us to share. Particularly when sometimes you can't do all those things for yourself at the moment. Like when you're sick. I think about how my mom always takes care of me. Even when I'm 35, I still like it when I go home and she'll make me some soup and rest. It feels really good to know someone else is taking care of you, doesn't it? What were some of the things God wanted the Israelites to do? Why do you think God wanted those? God said that we weren't supposed to grow on the land in the 7th year. I do remember that. God also said we were supposed to give people a fresh start. That one. Why? What does it feel like to rest? What does that look like for you? I don't know about you, but I definitely need rest in my life. The summer is a great time to take a break from schoolwork, get outside, get some more energy so you can go back to school strong. Or if you play sports, have you noticed that you don't play them all year long? You only play them for a season. And usually that gives your body time to get renewed and refreshed so you're ready to play again at your best when the season starts again. Why do you think it's important to have a fresh start? Have you ever needed a fresh start? I've needed quite a few. I was thinking about how I used to do swim team when I was a kid. And I would get so anxious when I got on the starting block waiting for it to start. And every once in a while, I jumped off before the whistle blew. But I was thankful that we were given one fresh start. We weren't penalized or weren't allowed to participate if we jumped off too early the one time. We got a second chance. And that always felt super good to me. I also think about the times when my sister forgave me when maybe I was a bit mean. I know, I was mean. I admit it. I wasn't always the best sister. Or even sometimes in school. Sometimes maybe I didn't study, but the teacher let me re-edit my papers or take the test over. Those first starts meant a lot to me sometimes. Lastly, why do you think it's important for the land to rest? Talked about that a little bit, but I know that our soil sometimes needs time to rest so that it can get its nutrients back. It needs to be fed just like us. I know sometimes animals need to rest just like we do. Anything else you can think of? I hope you keep imagining and learning as we go out from our story time today. I want to say thank you for being with me. It's been super great. Before we leave though, let's take one last look at our compassion camp. You might have noticed that our compassion camp is super bright and colorful now. That's what happens when you're in compassion camp for 5 weeks. There are a few places where we see compassion with the world on our map. The first place I see is way down at the bottom. See, there's some trash along the road, and these two people are picking it up. We all know it's not nice to pollute, and it's good sometimes to go up and make sure that we keep our earth clean by picking up the trash around. It's a great way to do it. Or up here, we see at our food bank, where we are taking care of our world, and they're painting this beautiful mural of the world to remind everyone to take care of God's creation. Or up here, we see that the prison is closed, meaning that other people have been given a fresh start. We don't need the prisons anymore. They found a different way to show that they're sorry. It's a little harder to envision, but hopefully one day. Last thing I want to point out to you is this beautiful rainbow. The rainbow always reminds us of God's covenant to stick with us. That God reminds us that He is in the world, caring and helping us care for the world. You might have noticed that I didn't finish coloring in all of Compassion Camp. There's still a few white spots around our place. And I did that on purpose, because I think it's an important way for us to remember that God is still creating and working on our communities, and that there's still compassion work for us to do in our communities. Our work is not finished yet. As you go out today, I encourage you to take your daily exam and sit at the table with your families at dinner or whatever time you can, and to continue to ask each other these questions. I think it's actually a really good practice for us in our lives to ask these questions even after Compassion Camp is done. It keeps us connected and helps us learn and grow. Thank you for being with me. Today's Compassion in Action, since we're thinking about how we care for the world, our challenge is to think of one good way that we can help the world around us. If you're looking for an idea, go grab the seeds out of your box that we sent you. Ask your parents for a place where you can plant them and it's okay, just like I did mine. And then make a little hole, stick your seeds in, cover them with dirt, and give them a bit of water. And remember to continue watering them each and every day. It will be a great time to think about the world around us and how God has asked us to care for it. Maybe you don't have a green thumb like me, but there are many different things we can do to take care of our world. Think about the saying, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Could we maybe give some of our old toys away to someone in need? Or how about taking our old clothing and making it into purses or other fun things? Or one great way to help our world is to stop using plastic straws and maybe use paper or metal straws that we can reuse over and over again. There's so many good things we do, so I challenge you to use those minds and be creative so that we can care for the world around us. Thanks for joining me for today's Compassion in Action.
So, welcome back. It's nice to see you. I really have enjoyed spending time together. I hope you have too. And I hope if you have any thoughts about what we've done, maybe you can share them. Let us know what you're thinking. Maybe share a picture. Over these 5 weeks, we've learned about compassion, right? We've said it a lot. That's a big word, lots of letters. We learned that compassion is about seeing, it's about feeling, it's about welcoming, it's about hearing. We've learned that compassion helps us to be brave. Remember, be brave, and how important it is to love and care for ourselves. That's important. We've learned how it is to help others, right? To trust God to lead us on how to help other people. So today, for our time in the story, we learned or explored even how compassion helps give fresh starts, right? Through this beautiful tradition of Jubilee. What a fun word to say, Jubilee. That just makes me smile. Jubilee helps us see, feel, trust God's abundance, right? There's enough for everybody. God's love is enormous. And it's meant for all people, and all of creation. Everything God's love is there for. And when we make space for resting, to gathering at the table, remember we talked about the table, and to care for other people, we show God's compassion. So I want you to think a little bit about fresh starts, if you have a fresh start. I like in the morning, I wake up and I'm like, hey, it's a new day. It's a fresh start. Why do you think it's important to rest? Why do you think it's important when you're feeling cranky and somebody says, maybe you're tired? I know I get cranky and I need to sleep, and sleep is important. Resting is important. Why is it important to celebrate? I think it's very important to celebrate. I love to celebrate things, small things, big things. It's fun to gather and celebrate. And think about how we show God's compassion through fresh starts, through rest, through celebration. So let's sing our compassion song one more time. May we be filled with compassion. Ready, friends? 1, 2, 3. May we be filled with compassion. May we be filled up to the top of our hearts when we have the power to make something right. What are we going to do? May we show God's love. May we show God's love. So as we close today, I want you to think about God's compassion. God's compassion is another form of God's justice, a little bit, making things right. releasing God's abundance of love and goodwill into the world, making sure everyone has what they need. When we rest and help people, and we help the land to rest, we show God's justice and compassion. When we gather at a table, in joy, we show God's justice and compassion. Justice, making things right, is what happens when we are compassionate. And don't forget, being compassionate, seeing, welcoming, being brave, showing up, loving ourselves, being present with each other, and fresh starts. And when we do these things, we show God's love, God's peace to the whole world. Let's close in the same way. I've colored my prayer today. Not sure if you did yours or not, but let's put our hand on our head, a hand on our heart. Here we go. Joyful Spirit, your loving hands are always creating freedom, release, and fresh starts. Help us do the same today by caring for all living things with gentleness and care. Open us to humbly receive that same care ourselves. Make our hearts smile and our actions sing. With your promise of abundance toward the whole world. Amen. Thanks for spending time with us. Thank you. Have a great day.